Have you ever looked up at the stars and wondered, how did we get here? Not just you and me, but all of it. Every tree, every bird, every single living thing on this planet. Where did it all begin? It's one of the biggest questions humanity has ever asked. And today, we're diving headfirst into the mystery. This is the story of how life began on Earth. Let's rewind the clock. Way back. I'm talking about 4.5 billion years ago. Imagine our solar system, brand new, still a chaotic mess of gas and dust. Our planet, Earth, wasn't the beautiful blue marble we know today. It was a hot, hellish world, constantly bombarded by asteroids and comets, with volcanoes erupting everywhere, spewing molten rock and toxic gases into the atmosphere. There was no oxygen to breathe, no oceans to swim in, just a desolate, fiery landscape. It sounds like the last place you'd expect to find life, right? And for a while, it was. For the first few 100 million years, Earth was in what scientists call the Hadean Aeon, named after Hades, the Greek god of the underworld. And honestly, it's a fitting name. The surface was a sea of magma. Any water that arrived on comets or asteroids would have instantly vaporized. The planet was essentially sterilizing itself over and over again. So, before life could even think about starting, the planet needed to cool down. Eventually, it did. Over hundreds of millions of years, the relentless bombardment from space slowed down. The planet's surface began to solidify, forming the first crust. As the temperature dropped, the water vapor in the atmosphere could finally condense and fall as rain. Not just a light shower, but a torrential downpour that lasted for millions of years. This epic rainfall filled the basins and craters, forming the world's first oceans. Now we have a key ingredient for life as we know it: liquid water. So, we have a planet with oceans. But these early oceans were very different from today's. They were likely a brownish iron-rich soup, and probably very hot, maybe even close to boiling in some places near volcanic vents. The atmosphere was also completely alien. It was thick with carbon dioxide, nitrogen, water vapor, and maybe some methane and ammonia, but critically, almost no free oxygen. Breathing this air would have been instantly fatal for us. So we've got the stage set. A young, volatile planet with hot, chemical-rich oceans under a toxic sky. Not exactly a paradise, but it was in this primordial soup that something incredible was about to happen. Scientists believe that the building blocks of life, simple organic molecules, were forming in this environment. Think of them as the Lego bricks. Before you can build a castle, you need the individual bricks. In our case, these bricks are things like amino acids, which are the components of proteins, and nucleotides, which make up DNA and RNA. So where did these crucial first bricks come from? Well, there are a couple of leading theories. One popular idea is that they were cooked up right here on Earth. In 1952, two scientists, Stanley Miller and Harold Urey, conducted a now-famous experiment. They tried to recreate the conditions of early Earth in a lab. They took a flask of water to represent the ocean and filled it with a mix of gases they thought were in the early atmosphere: methane, ammonia, and hydrogen. Then, they zapped it with electric sparks to simulate lightning storms. And what happened? After just a week, the clear water turned into a murky brown broth. When they analyzed it, they found something amazing. They had created several types of amino acids, the very building blocks of proteins. The Miller-Urey experiment was groundbreaking. It showed that the basic components of life could form naturally from simple, non-living chemicals under the right conditions. The energy from lightning, or perhaps the intense ultraviolet radiation from the young sun, could have powered the chemical reactions needed to create these vital molecules in the early oceans or in small ponds on land. But there's another fascinating possibility. What if the building blocks of life weren't made on Earth at all? What if they came from outer space? We know that the early Earth was constantly being hit by comets and meteorites. When scientists analyze meteorites that have fallen to Earth today, like the famous Murchison meteorite that landed in Australia in 1969, they find a treasure trove of organic compounds, including a wide variety of amino acids. Some of these are the same ones we use in our bodies, but many are types not found in life on Earth. This suggests that these molecules can and do form in space, perhaps in the dusty clouds between stars or on asteroids. So, it's entirely possible that a significant portion of Earth's first organic molecules were delivered, ready-made by Cosmic Delivery Service. It wasn't an either-or situation. Either it was likely a combination of both. Some molecules were cooked up in Earth's primordial soup, while others hitched a ride on celestial bodies, all adding to the chemical richness of the early oceans. So now, our primordial soup is getting more interesting. It's not just water and salt anymore. It's swirling with a diverse collection of organic molecules, amino acids, nucleotides, sugars, and lipids. We have the bricks. But a pile of bricks isn't a house. The next, and perhaps the most difficult, step is figuring out how these simple molecules assembled themselves into the complex structures needed for life. How did we go from a soup of chemicals to the first living cell? This is the jump from chemistry to biology, and it's one of the biggest puzzles in science. The key problem is that modern life is based on an incredibly complex interplay between proteins and DNA. DNA holds the instructions for building the proteins. But you need proteins to read the DNA and build more DNA. It's a classic chicken and egg problem. Which came first? The instructions, or the machinery, to read them? This is where another molecule enters the story. A molecular superstar called RNA. RNA, or ribonucleic acid, is a lot like DNA, but it's usually single-stranded and a bit more versatile. In our modern cells, RNA acts as a messenger, carrying instructions from the DNA in the nucleus out to the protein-building machinery in the cell. But here's the cool part. Scientists have discovered that some RNA molecules, called ribozymes, can also act like enzymes. That means they can speed up or catalyze chemical reactions. This discovery led to a powerful idea called the RNA world hypothesis. This theory suggests that before the current DNA and protein-based life, there was an era where life was based almost entirely on RNA. In this RNA world, RNA molecules did everything. They stored genetic information, like DNA does today, and they also catalyzed the reactions needed to copy themselves, a job now done by proteins. Imagine an early ocean filled with nucleotides. Perhaps on the surface of some clay minerals, or near a deep-sea hydrothermal vent. These nucleotides started linking up to form short RNA strands. By pure chance, one of these strands might have had the ability to make copies of itself, using other nucleotides in the soup as building blocks. It wouldn't have been a very good copier at first, probably making lots of mistakes. But these mistakes, these mutations, are the engine of evolution. A slightly different RNA strand might be a little more stable, or a little better at copying itself. It would then start to outcompete the others. Over millions and millions of years, through this process of molecular natural selection, these RNA molecules could have become more complex and more efficient. They might have evolved the ability to string amino acids together, creating the first simple proteins. This was a huge step. A partnership between RNA and proteins would be much more powerful than RNA alone. The final piece of the puzzle is the cell membrane. Life isn't just a jumble of molecules, it's contained. It has an inside and an outside. You need a barrier to keep the good stuff in and the bad stuff out, to maintain a stable internal environment. This barrier is the cell membrane, which in modern life is made of molecules called lipids. These lipids have a neat property. One end of the molecule is attracted to water, and the other end is repelled by it. When you put them in water, they spontaneously arrange themselves into bubbles or spheres, called vesicles or micelles. It's easy to imagine that in the primordial soup. Some of these self-assembling lipid bubbles might have trapped a self-replicating RNA molecule and some other useful chemicals inside. This was a game changer. Suddenly, you have a protocell. It's not truly alive yet, but it's getting very close. Inside this little bubble, the chemical reactions can happen more efficiently because all the necessary components are concentrated together. The protocell can maintain an internal chemistry that's different from the ocean outside. If the RNA inside can replicate, and if the vesicle can grow and divide, then you have the beginnings of inheritance and reproduction. You have the first ancestor of all life on Earth. From these humble beginnings, a protocell containing a self-replicating RNA molecule. The long and winding road of evolution began. Eventually, the more stable DNA molecule would take over the job of storing genetic information. And the more versatile proteins would take over as the main catalysts, leaving RNA with its modern role as the messenger. The first true cells emerged, and from that single common ancestor, life began to diversify, to branch out, to fill every nook and cranny of our planet, ultimately leading to the incredible biodiversity we see today, including us. The story is far from complete. Scientists are still working tirelessly in labs and field sites around the world. From the scorching deserts of Australia to the deep-sea vents at the bottom of the ocean, trying to fill in the gaps in this incredible narrative. But each new discovery brings us a little closer to understanding our deepest origins. It's a journey that started billions of years ago in a hot, chemical-rich ocean on a young and violent planet. Thank you so much for joining me on this first chapter of our journey into the origin of life. There's so much more to explore, like the rise of photosynthesis, the explosion of complex life, and the great extinction events that shaped our world. If you enjoyed this video and want to learn what happened next, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next episode. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. See you next time.